Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast with your hosts, Jacob Smedley,
Sam Betts,
Justin Reedhammer,
and Nathan Romanoff.
Today's topics include real-life MLB talk with Sam Betts, another episode of the divisional recap with Justin Reedhammer, talking about the AFC West, finishing out the AFC, and wrapping up Nathan Romanoff with conversation about soccer starting up in Europe. Now here's Sam Betts with MLB talk here in this episode. Take it away, Sam.
And Jake, this season, I mean, it's been a mess. The MLB is a complete mess due to this coronavirus. So, obviously, opening day was supposed to be March 26th, but that never really happened. And a lot of players were concerned at that point about how they were going to be paid and what was going to happen with the season. So, the MLB and the MLB PA, the Players Association, or the Players Union, they agreed on a deal in late March, and the MLB was going to give players and teams around $170 million to play with so that teams could pay their players. They could divide it up and pay the players based on like their salary and their contract. So then the next part was, how is the MLB going to be able to play games? Are they going to be able to play games? Where are they going to play them? So there were a couple scenarios here that the MLB wanted to go through. The MLB obviously wants to play as many games as possible, and obviously the players do too, because the more games the players play, the more money they're going to have. When we look at scenario one here, their MLB could have all the teams play at their home ballparks in their like regular divisions, like the AL West, the NL East, kind of like that. And they would play like an 80-game season, 82-game season, something like that. The problem with that is some of the cities where like the players, where the teams play and the players would be playing, especially in a city like, let's say, New York, where there's a high case of people having the coronavirus, that's very dangerous for those players for those players to be in, and that's one of the main concerns with this. There would be another scenario.
I mean, you got to worry about travel. I mean, worrying about travel from one place to the next. That's why, again, as you're probably going to get to, you've got to keep travel at a limit. You've got to have the East Coast. If you're going to do this, they've got to have the East Coast teams just play the East Coast teams, the West Coast teams just play the West Coast teams, to limit that cross-country travel where a lot could be spread across the teams.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that's one of the other scenarios they had. They were going to have all the players like structure the divisions, like have 3 divisions that would be like geographically based. So like you said, all the players on the East would play, like, all the teams on the East, all the teams in like the central United States would play all the teams there, and the same thing for the West. That was another scenario they came up with, but it's looking like a little less likely, just because it's hard. It'd be hard for like all the teams. It's still, there's that travel thing. You still have to travel to all those places in those regions, and it's just not a very economically good decision for the MLB. There's also other scenarios where they would have teams play in their spring training, where they play spring training, and they would have the Grapefruit League and the Cactus League, and they would play from there. That, I don't know. There's so many decisions that the MLB has to make, and there's so many possibilities that they can go through. Now, another thing
I liked, for Bryce Harper's Instagram post, I know we're going to get there here in a few minutes, but I just wanted, again, to touch on the East-West format specifically. Probably one of the biggest things that he put in that Instagram post, where he's talking about the East and the West and how that would work with the teams. I think that's a great, like the NBA kind of format that they have, where you have just 2 conferences. I think that would work very well. You also have, again, the Florida and Arizona idea, like you were saying, where you have all of the Western, even Central teams, Arizona, and then kind of a cumulative World Series from those two, like one team from Florida, Arizona, in like a random location that they pick that's not heavily affected. I think that would be a good idea that they could execute.
Yeah, at this point I'm not really sure because everyone has their opinion, everyone has their ideas. One thing that is for certain is a lot of the players, not I wouldn't say all of them, but a decent amount of them are not very happy with how the MLB is handling this. The MLB was planning on doing like a 50% a reduction of player salaries just because they're playing less games. They were going from 162 games to 80, 100, 80, 82 games, somewhere
82.
around there.
82, I think I saw.
Yeah, but now they're thinking that the MLB might take another 33% of their pay. And
That's
Blake Snell,
that's
I
that's
know,
crazy.
a pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays, was very unhappy with that. He was quoted saying something on the lines of, "I want to get mine. He wants to get his pay, and especially if they're going to be playing and they're going to be, I don't want to say risking their lives, but in a sense, they're going and playing, and there could be a risk of them getting the coronavirus and getting the sickness. So I understand why the
Exactly. I
MLB.
was going to ask you, what do you think about that? Because my personal take is they should get more than 50%, at least 60, 65, maybe even 70. I mean, you've got to give them a majority of the pay. They're the ones playing. They're the ones traveling in the planes. They're the ones going away from their families for the long period of time during this pandemic. The owners can't get at more than 30%, in my opinion. I mean, you've gotta make sure that the players who, again, are putting themselves on the front line, and okay, maybe not on the front lines, of course, that may be a bit much, but putting themselves at risk, playing in these different stadiums, excuse me, but and putting themselves at risk like that. They've got to get at more than half. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean the players do have a right to be angry about this, and I mean as much as of a baseball fan as like we are, I want to see baseball played again, but I also don't want the players to risk getting the coronavirus just for my entertainment. Like that's not fair to them. It's not fair
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
the MLB, and I understand why they're angry. There's another topic with this coronavirus affecting the MLB is the draft. The MLB has decided to go from a 40
Yeah.
round draft to a 5 round draft. That is a
I
very
completely forgot it was 40 rounds.
that's a very big cut of players from high schools, from colleges who aren't going to have that chance to go to the MLB now. So that might not affect the MLB directly. In fact, that actually helps the MLB. The MLB and the teams are going to be able to save millions of dollars in bonuses in signing other players to come and play for them. But college teams are going to have a hard time dealing with new players coming in, and then they still have the players who might be in like their junior or like senior season who they thought were going to go to the MLB draft, or the players are thinking, well, I have nowhere to go. I'm going to go back and play another year of college ball. Or you have high school players who are going to be drafted, and they're going to be like, well, I have nowhere to go now. I can't go to the MLB. I'm going to go play college. I'm going to go play in college now. So you have all these influx of players coming back into these college teams, which is going to cause disagreements on scholarships, trying to get starting spots. You're going to have players trying to transfer different teams, and it's just going to be a big mess, Jake. It's a huge
Yeah.
mess. It's good for the MLB. Don't get me wrong. Saving all of that money on those bonuses and signing these players, I was going to say the MLB a lot more money, but there's no new influx with a very few amount of influx of new players coming into the MLB. That's also very bad because you don't have a new big draft class like you usually have filling all those minor league teams in, and especially with like the MLB and MILB proposing to remove some of these minor league teams. That's
That's what I
also
was
not
going to
going to
get
help
to. Yeah.
in that case either. So everything is kind of coming full circle here, and it's a very big mess. Now, I know you mentioned about Bryce Harper's plan. We'll talk about that right now. We have Bryce Harper over social media did mention his own perspective on this, and I have it up here. He has a plan for 135 games, around 50-ish more than what the MLB is planning to do. He on an off day every 2 weeks on a Monday and Sunday, and he even planned on having doubleheader games and 7-inning games. So he's planning to have the MLB and the players play as many games as possible because, again, the players want to be paid a
Yeah.
lot more money. Not necessarily a lot more money than they would for a regular season, but they want to be paid more money than what the MLB is expecting to pay them. He even talked about having like a playoffs, like a 2-week World Series, somewhat like a Super Bowl a Super Bowl week deal. 10-team round robin format, like the College World Series. They'd have they haven't played in the Texas Stadium or like any other stadium that would be considered to be safe. I mean, from what
He was
I'm
thinking
looking
Las
at,
Vegas.
it does sound like a good
I
idea.
saw on the post
but
he was.
I'm sorry, Jake. Were you saying something there?
Oh, no, I was just thinking that's a good idea. He was talking about Las Vegas. I watched a YouTube video the other day where it was talking about how Las Vegas, that would be a great spot because you would have all the hotels there in the Las Vegas Strip. You could be able to kind of quarantine the two teams that made it that far. I know we also talked about there you have you could have the All-Star game. And you can incorporate it that way, home run derby as well. So I think that would be a way that they could incorporate like that whole kind of sequence at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, from what it looks like on paper, it seems like a really good idea. But the bottom line and what I want to finish off is the MLB, they're working hard to try to get baseball back. And as a fan, I appreciate that. And I really do think that the MLB is going to have games this year. Whether they have
We can
40
only hope.
games, whether they have 80 games, whether they have like 130 some games. I just hope baseball comes back, and I think the MLB is prepared to play.
Yeah, me too. I just hope it comes back. I hope they have a good solution in place. And this is a year that you can try stuff out. Again, we're talking about the universal DH in the National League. And then you also have experimental things like maybe a College World Series type of playoff format, like Bryce Harper said, or kind of these different ideas. I think this is the year you do it, shortened season, so where you can try out these new ideas. So with baseball, we now move on to another episode of the Division Series, wrapping up the AFC. Here's Justin Reedhammer talking about the AFC West. Take it away, Justin.
Thank you, Sam. Now, moving on to the NFL, we're going to talk about the AFC West. So, first off, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, who had the 5-11 season this year. Not too great. Pretty bad, actually. Phillip Rivers, he didn't have quite the season everybody wanted him to have. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. He had 4,615 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. Melvin Gordon also had an inconsistent year this year with 162 carries, 612 yards, and 8 touchdowns. This team offensively wasn't very good. They were 21st in points per game. And in yards per game, they were 10th, which is pretty good. Their passing yards were probably the best part of their game at 6th, but rushing-wise, they were 28th, very bottom of the league. Their defense wasn't bad. They were really good, actually. They were 6th overall defensively. However, this team finished 25th in the NFL, so they didn't really have a good run this year. What do you guys make of that?
I mean, I think compared to the year before, this past year, when they had a good playoff run, I think they underwhelmed this past season. I think people expected them to do better than what they did, and I think they underperformed, which, I mean, I didn't expect it, but with Melvin Gordon, I know he wasn't happy with his contract and stuff, and obviously he's moved on to the Broncos now, a division rival. So, I mean, there were some bumps in the team with that situation, and I guess you can see why they kind of went downhill And Phillip Rivers is now gone. He's getting up there in age. Signed a 1-year deal with the Colts. So I guess you can see why they kind of had a down season last year when you look at it that way.
Yeah, I think they definitely had a down season. I think that they're definitely moving in the right direction. I think they addressed the defense and the offense in free agency and the draft. Of course, drafting Justin Herbert, which we talked about in the previous episode, and also addressing the defense, signing Chris Harris Jr. For the back end there in the secondary, taking him from the Broncos. We have a few players exchanging that ways there. But yeah, I think we could see more than 5 wins. Maybe I'd say around 7 or 8, and maybe I don't know. I mean that might be one of the toughest divisions in the AFC, as we'll get to.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to ask. Do you think that they're going to be good enough next year to be a wild card contender with the improvements they've made in the offseason?
I don't know.
Yeah, neither do I. It's a tough division. I mean, I think the division's gotten better. I think Vegas has improved during the draft and offseason. The Broncos have, and the Chargers have as well. So I think it'll be competitive. I'm not sure if they'll quite have enough to make the wild card, but we'll see.
Yeah, there are a lot of good teams that really upgraded over the offseason so far. So, I mean, it's very hard to pick one right now.
Yeah, let's talk about another one of those teams. The previously Oakland Raiders, now Las Vegas Raiders, who are 7-9 last year. They were looking good for a while, but they ended up going on a bit of a losing streak at the end and kind of losing their chance to make the playoffs. Derek Carr, he had an okay season this year. 4,054 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. They had a breakout star in Josh Jacobs, at rookie running back, running for 1,150 yards and 7 touchdowns. And another person I want to highlight on this team is Darren Waller. Somebody that we didn't see coming, and he was over 1,000 yards, 3 touchdowns, and his, for a tight end, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he was the staple of your fantasy team there, Justin.
Yeah, I did have him on fantasy, and he provided. He was mostly a yardage guy, though. He didn't score a lot of touchdowns, but maybe we'll change that next year. So, offensively, this group was in points per game. They were 24th, yards per game 11th, and most of that came through passing. However, their rushing attack wasn't terrible. It was middle of the pack. And defensively, they were towards the bottom at 19th. The rushing defense was pretty good at 8th, but their pass defense was 25th. So when this team, you would boil it all down, they were 22nd. So not a great season. So what do you guys think? Do you think they did enough to improve this offseason to maybe make it back to the playoffs? I don't know. I think they improved a bit offensively, grabbing Henry Ruggs there. They got him. I personally feel like CeeDee Lamb was a better fit for them. A vertical threat for Derek Carr, can do a lot playmaking wise. Ruggs, not a bad option. He definitely helps that offense. Gives maybe Derek Carr that number 1 kind of speed wide receiver that they can go to balance out that, again, because a lot of teams stack the box. They really didn't have that overpowering wide receiver threat on the outside. So I think the offense is going to get a bit better. I feel like they still have Terrell Williams. I think, they still have Terrell Williams there on the other side. Defensively, I don't know. Damon Arnett, I don't know if he really, I think they may have took him a bit too soon, as a lot of experts said at the time. But I think he'll help that pass defense. I still think they maybe needed to add a few more. I think they added Demarius Randall as well. They added some free agents too. So I think they're going to improve, but I still have them a little ways away, maybe 1 or 2 years, maybe still below the Chargers and Broncos. I think those two teams did a bit more in the offseason to put themselves ahead, closer to the Chiefs. I mean, that's kind of the standard at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jake. Henry Ruggs, not a bad wide receiver, very fast. Again, I agree with you. I think CeeDee Lamb probably would have been the better option. But, getting good young wide receivers, good for their offense in a division which is very offense-heavy with the Chiefs. You need to score points. Defensively, again, Arnett, he's not a bad player. I think they might have taken him a bit early. I think there were some other areas they could have addressed with better players at that point in the draft. But again, I think he'll help the defensive pass protecting against that, and especially with Mahomes and the Chiefs in that division, I think that, it's not a bad option.
All right, and moving on to the Denver Broncos, who were 7-9 as well. They didn't have that great of a season either. For their season was a bit different though, because they weren't really in the conversation for most of it. Their winning kind of came towards the end of the season. So what they really needed to improve on was offense, I would have to say. They were 28th in points per game, 28th yards per game. They didn't have a quarterback, throughout most of the season. Like, they rotated through 3 different quarterbacks. Joe Flacco was one of them. He was the best one, throwing for 1,822 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Other than that, defensively, they had an okay season. Total defense, they were 12th, and their total team rank was 18th. So, they still had a lot to improve on, though. So, I don't know. I think that they did enough to make it back to the wild card round this year. But I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think?
It was not a good season. Joe Flacco did not perform well, in my opinion. But I like Drew Lock. He came in at the end of the season. I think he went 4-1 or something on those lines, which was good for him as a starting quarterback. Again, the offense definitely improved in the offseason. I liked what they did in the draft, going out, getting 2 wide receivers in Hamler and Jaron Judy. So I think that that's a big boost for them, and I think that maybe Locke not playing the whole season last year actually will benefit them in the long run this upcoming season.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think they definitely upgraded, especially offensively. Even Melvin Gordon, we talked about last episode as well. Yep. Having that 2 running back tandem there with Lindsey, Gordon. Yeah. Then you have the wide receivers, Judy and Hamler. And I think Drew Lock, those weapons around him, I think are really going to help him take that next step as a young quarterback. It always helps when you have explosive weapons around you, and I think he's going to take that next step. I think he'll be again, not maybe Mahomes level, but take that next step in the starting quarterback as a starting quarterback. And that defense, they added AJ Bouye from the Jaguars, picked him up. They still have, again, an amazing front. You have different guys in there that always find a way to step up. So I would right now put them as the second team behind the Chiefs with what they did in the offseason. As long as Drew Lock really takes that step forward with the weapons around him.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And now we can move on to the Kansas City Chiefs, who were 12-4, and obviously the reigning Super Bowl champions. We had Patrick Mahomes, who had a very good season this year. Not as good as last year, but still pretty
just
top
won the
notch.
Super Bowl.
Fourth, yeah, 4,000.
Just casually breezed through the playoffs.
Just won the Super Bowl. That's all. 4,031 passing yards. 26 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Pretty good ratio there. That's 5-1. Their offense was the staple of their team, basically. 6th in yards per game, 5th in points per game, and defensively they weren't bad. They were 17th, which is middle of the pack. So their defense was better than last year, and that's what I think actually carried them to where they needed to be. Because their offense, they remained good, but their defense improved enough to where they could actually win the Super Bowl. And I think that they're going to be the team to beat in not just in this division, but in the AFC for years to come. They're going to probably be the new Patriots. I don't know if you guys feel the same.
New Patriots. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes for you is Belichick and Brady. Is that what I heard? The next Belichick and Brady.
That's what you're hearing. And Andy Reid, he's just as smart as Belichick, and Patrick Mahomes, he's got a lot of talent, and he's got a lot of arm talent too. Like, he can make really impressive passes, and at such a young age, he's, putting up very good numbers right now. I think that he's got the ability to, become the next Tom Brady and to really, take control of the conference.
I think he will be the next superstar in the league as Tom Brady's up there in age. He's going to have this stint with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but after that, Mahomes is the next all-star in the NFL. He is top dog. he and the Chiefs will be up there consistently competing for Super Bowls for what I feel like into the next decade, pretty much.
Next decade. That's a hot take. I think I've got to agree with it. But my only thing is I feel like Mahomes is going to have maybe even a bit more competition in that AFC in the coming years. You've got Lamar Jackson, you've got Justin's guy, Josh Allen. You've got these young quarterbacks. I think that are going to really take some next step forward. I think he's going to have a lot more competition than what Brady and Belichick had with the Patriots when, I mean, it was primarily just Peyton Manning and Ben Roethlisberger for the most part is what they were, and that 1 year of Mark Sanchez that they were going up against. That 1 year of Mark Sanchez back in the late aughts there. But I think definitely, I think he'll have more competition, but don't get me wrong, I definitely agree they will be at the top of the conversation when it comes to the AFC in terms of championships moving forward. Again, with that high-powered offense. I mean, you don't need a top 10 defense when you got an offense that's running on all cylinders and really can outscore anyone like that. And now, after we wrapped up the division talk, now here's Nate Romanoff with some soccer football conversation across the pond. What do you got for us, Nate?
Yeah, so, as we know, due to the coronavirus, sports have been pretty much at a standstill. But slowly and surely they are starting to come back with, obviously, baseball in Korea, and now even soccer in Europe as the German Bundesliga started back up this weekend. Which is a good step. There are obviously no fans. The players who are on the bench are to sit 6 feet apart from each other and wear masks, which they are doing. And I think it's good to get back to sports. And, at least we have something to watch and entertain us. I mean, I know fans are a big part of it, but I feel like during these times, you just got to take what you can get. And, seeing it on TV and being able to watch it it feels great. It feels amazing. And, we also have the Serie A in Italy, where Cristiano Ronaldo plays. They have set a June 13th return date to play, so hopefully that stays where that is. And England, the government has given them, the Premier League, the okay to start resuming play as of June 1st. So we'll see what happens there, but hopefully that can come about. And as I said, slowly and surely, sports is returning around the world. So it's very good to see.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, a lot of these soccer leagues coming back over there in Europe, and hopefully again that can spread to the United States with other sports. Again, you talk about Ronaldo, some like major like players involved there as well. Like you mentioned, Ronaldo is.
Yeah, in Spain, where Messi plays for Barcelona, they are planning to return to play in June as well. They have already started team training, so that's good news. And the only league that really won't be returning is the French Ligue 1. They have canceled the soccer league in France, which is kind of strange considering all these other big league countries like Spain, England, and Germany are returning. But no, the government in France said no more soccer for the rest of the season. So they stopped the season and they awarded the championship to PSG, where Neymar obviously plays, as they were top of the table during the stoppage.
So will the United States be returning as well?
I'm not really sure what's going on with the MLS. They have thrown ideas in, like to have a style, like a tournament style kind of competition over here for them, because their season basically was only 2 weeks in. They only played 2 games of their season before the pandemic hit, and they had to stop play. So, I mean, they were thinking of maybe just coming back and playing a tournament-style competition, but we'll see where that goes. Obviously, you can't have fans in the stands, and you have to be able to have the test available to play, which they do. In Germany, the players get tested before each match week. So each week they get tested, the staff gets tested to make sure that nobody is coronavirus positive.
That's great to hear, and maybe we can, again, have not only, again, as you said, other soccer leagues in the future, even other sports leagues be able to take those kind of precautions, like the German league, as you mentioned, setting those kind of precedents there with how to treat this virus as it's going on right now.
Yeah. Hopefully, other sports leagues, especially here in the United States, can look at that and implement that into their systems so that they can return as well.
All right, everyone, that looks to conclude this week's episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. You can find this episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast on YouTube. Thank you all for listening. Signing off.